Hi, I'm Andy Maddock, and today we're going to use Python to create a new database using SQLite, and then we're going to use Python to read that database. Okay, so the first thing you do is you're going to import the library for the SQLite database. So import keyword, and then it's called SQLite 3. Next, I'm going to comment, set up the database connection. So I'm going to set the database connection here. In order to do that, I'll make a variable called connection. So connection equals, and now I'm going to access the SQLite class, SQLite 3, and the function called connect. So in connect, that's going to be the name of the new database file. So I'm going to put it in a folder called out, and then the file is call it test.db. Okay. Next, I'm going to create a database cursor, so I'll call the variable database cursor. And I'm going to use the connection variable that I just created, and I'm going to call the cursor function from there. Okay, I'm going to put a comment in, so now I'm going to create the table. So this is going to be creating a first table and a database. So a database is like an Excel spreadsheet. You have rows and columns, and then each spreadsheet is like a new table. So we're going to create one table here. So I'm going to use my db cursor variable that I created, and then the function in it called execute. And then here is where you can put your SQL, whatever you're doing, the SQL query or creation. So I'm going to use this to create it. So a normal SQL command, create. So I'll create table, because I'm going to make a table. If you use the if not exists, then you don't get an error if you run this multiple times. If you just do create table and it creates a new table, the next time you run it, if the table is already there, it'll throw an error. If you do create table if not exists, if the table is already there, it'll skip this part of the code. So if table not exist, and then we'll call it just main. And then I'm going to put what I want in the table. So the table is called main, and then I'm going to put the column names. So UID for unique identifier. So normally in a SQL database, you'll have a unique identifier for each of the rows. So that's going to be an integer. So that's the type of variable. And then I'll make that the primary key. So the primary key, there can only be one per table, and it's going to be auto incremented by default. So that means that every time I insert a new row, it'll automatically increment this by 1. So it's unique. Okay, the next column, I'm just going to be original and call it column 1. Make this text, so it's just a text field. And I'm going to say it's not null. So it can't be null. Column 2, text, not null. And we'll do column 3, text, not null. Okay, we're going to end that. So that will create our new table. Okay, next I'm going to put some data into this table. So I'm going to define an array. So we'll put C1, C2, and C3. So in each column, I'm going to do column 1 will be C1, column 2 will be C2, and column 3 will be C3. So just some data that I'm putting in the columns. And now I'm going to call that db cursor again, the db cursor variable. And I'm going to use the execute command again, because like I said, anytime you want to do something to the SQLite database, you can use the execute command. This time I'm going to use the SQL command insert. So insert into, and then into main, because that's the name of the table. And then parentheses, and then I got to say which column I'm putting the data in. So this is going to go into column 1. So the first part of the array will go to column 1. The second one will go to column 2. The third one will go to column 3. We're going to end the parentheses there. And then we're going to put the values in. So the keyword values uppercase, and then question mark for each value. Doing it this way blocks SQL injection. But for most, if this isn't a web-facing program, you usually don't have to worry about that. But you might as well get used to doing it that way. And then comment, and then I'm going to put in the array here. So this is the row array. So this has my values. So basically I'm going to be assigning these 3 values to these 3 columns through this manner right here. And then in order to get it to do what I want it to do, I have to commit it. So I'm going to do connection. So that's my main variable connection. And then you do commits. And then that's it. So what that does is it runs through this whole thing, creates the table, grabs these values, puts it into the table, and then it commits it into the database. So I'm going to hit the run. So now that it's finished, it's in the database. So we can look over here and see in the out folder that now there's a test.db file. And that's the database file that I just created here. It's in the out folder at test.db. So now I'm going to go to this new script here. And in this new script, what I'm going to do is read the data that I just put into the database. That's a secondary script. So I'm going to do import, and so import the library again. We're going to do SQLite 3 library. So the first thing, I'm just going to put a comment, create the connection to the database. Okay, so I'm going to use the connection variable. This can be named whatever you want. I'm calling it connection. And then SQLite 3, and then connect. So the connect function, just like we did before. And we're going to go in the out folder, and we're going to call it test.db. So this is going to be looking for the file that I just created. And then db cursor, we got to do that again. So that this variable can be named whatever. Connection, so that's our first variable name, and call the cursor function from there. So that creates a cursor to that. Okay, now once we have that, what we'll do is we're going to say, we're going to create a loop here. So the loop will have a variable called row. So now for row in, and then we'll do db cursor. So that's our cursor variable, and execute. So that's the command to SQLite saying what we want. So now I'm going to use the select command. So select is used to grab data from the database. So I'm going to grab the UID, and then I'm going to grab column 1. So I'll just grab those 2 for now. And then I'm going to say from, so the from keyword, and then I'm going to grab that from the main table that I created there. Colon. So now it's going to loop through here, and then every time it comes through, I'm going to print out to the console view the row. So that's the row variable that I'm creating. So every time it goes through here, if there's multiple rows, it assigns each row to this row variable, and it's going to print it out. So right now we just have the one row that we created. We're going to hit run. And then we see right here we have 1 and C1. So 1 is the UID column, and C1 is this column. So if we look back at this script, we'll see, okay, there's C1 that we put in, but you notice I didn't put in the UID column in here because that's auto incrementing. So it's automatically going to create 1 anytime I insert into here. So if I hit run again over here, so it ran again, now I have 2 rows, both with this data, but it'll be row 1 and 2 for the UID. So now I'll go back here and I'll hit run again. Now we see there's 2 rows, both with C1 and C1. So this is grabbing the columns individually. You can also do an asterisk if you want to grab all the columns at once. And that looks like this. So now I grabbed all the data at once. So you can either specify specific columns that you want to grab, or you can grab all the columns at once by using an asterisk and then printing that out here. If I want to do a quick count function, I can make a variable called count equals 0. And then in this loop here, we can count. So count equals count plus 1. And then after the loop is over, we can print the number of rows found. So number of rows, colon, and then I'm going to concatenate it. So I got to convert this to a string because it's a integer right now. So count. And then I'm going to end that. So now I hit run. So we have number of rows is 2, and you can see the 2 rows. So if I go back here, let me change the data a little bit. 3, 4, and 5. Whoops, 5. Hit run. So now it added 3, 4, 5. Go back here and hit run again. Now I have 3 rows, and you can see 3, 4, 5 are in there now. So that's an easy way to add the data to it. And it'll, like I said, auto increment. So the UID is always going up. So that's all we have for this video. Thank you for watching.